Jack drove 50 kilometers per hour from Smithville to Dry Gulch. From Dry Gulch to Streetville, he drove at 80 kilometers per hour. The whole trip was 550 kilometers and took 8 hours. How far is it from Dry Gulch to Streetville? Here we can draw a diagram or a line for this problem. So from here to here. Now, actually, let's say that SM stands for Smithville. M is for Smithville, and it's over here. Okay? And here is SM for Smithville. And right over here, we have Dry Gulch, which will represent by DG. And from Smithville to Dry Gulch, Jack drove 50 kilometers per hour. 50 kilometers per hour. But from Dry Gulch to Streetville, which will represent by ST, he drove at 80 kilometers per hour. And the problem is saying that the whole trip from Smithville to Dry Gulch to Streetville, or basically Smithville to Streetville, the whole trip was 550 kilometers. And the whole trip took 8 hours. So we have 50 over here, and we'll make two equations. 50 SM, or let's say X. X represents the number of hours that were driven in 50 kilometers per hour. So 50X plus 80Y. Y represents the number of hours that were driven at 80 kilometers per hour. So 50X plus 80Y, when we drive, or like the combination of these two is 550 kilometers. 550 kilometers. And in total, the amount of hours we spent driving 50 kilometers per hour plus the amount of time we spent driving 80 kilometers per hour is equal to 8. Now let's rearrange the second equation to get the value of X or Y. But here let's get the value of X. So we need to move Y onto the other side of the equation. We have negative Y, and these cancel out now because positive and negative cross out. And we have X left. And since we subtracted Y here, we have to subtract Y onto the other side of the equation, because whatever we do on one side of the equation, we have to do it to the other. So X is equal to 8 minus Y. Okay. So there we have that. X is equal to 8 minus Y. Now let's plug in the new value of X for X in the first equation. So in place of x in the first equation, we'll write 8 minus y. So we have 50. Since there's x over there, we'll write in parentheses 8 minus y plus 80y is equal to 550 kilometers. Multiply 50 inside of the parentheses. 50 times 8 is 400. Minus 5 times negative y. Keep the negative over there because there's a positive over here. And we have 50y plus 80y is equal to 550 kilometers. We don't need to put that kilometers when solving the equation. Okay, so 400, since we need to bring it to the other side of the equation, we'll subtract 400. And since we subtracted 400 on this side of the equation, we have to do it to the other, because whatever we do on one side of the equation, we have to do it to the other. So we have 550 minus 400. And here positive 400 and negative 400 cancel out. Here we were basically doing the inverse operation. Now we have to solve negative 50y plus 80y, which will give us 30y. And set that equal to 550 minus 400, which is 150. Divide 30 on both sides of the equation, and it will give you y is equal to 5. These two cancel out because they make a 1. 150 divided by 30 is equal to 5. So now we got the amount of hours that were traveled with 80 kilometers per hour. But we still need to figure out how many hours were spent when Jack was driving 50 kilometers per hour. Okay, now that we know that here he drove 5 hours, we'll use the second equation that we got, which was x plus y is equal to 8, and substitute 5 for y, because we got y is equal to 5. So replace that y with 5. We have x plus 5 is equal to 8. Bring 5 to the other side of the equation by doing the inverse operation of addition. And since we subtracted 5 on this side of the equation, we have to do it to the other. Because whatever we do on one side of the equation, we have to do it on the other. So here we'll also subtract 5. So we have x is equal to 8 minus 5. And 8 minus 5 is equal to 3. So x is equal to 3. And this tells us that the amount of hours driven when Jack was driving 50 kilometers per hour was 3. So here we can just get rid of this and write 3 hours. And now we're being asked how far it is from Dry Gulch to Streetville. So here we're given that from Dry Gulch to Streetville over here, he drove at 80 kilometers per hour. So from Dry Gulch to Streetville, he drove at 80 kilometers per hour. So we can write that over here, 80 kilometers per hour. So if he drove at 80 kilometers per hour, and in total he drove 5 hours, then since we're multiplying the number of hours by 5, we have to multiply the number of kilometers by 5. Because whatever we do here, we have to do on the other side too. So we have 400 kilometers every 5 hours. And this over here is the distance from Dry Gulch to Streetville. So our answer is equal to 400 kilometers from from Dry Gulch to Streetville.